I'm Louisa Pilbeam. This is Counting the Cost on Al Jazeera, your weekly look at the world of business and economics. This week, a big, beautiful bill or bad legislation. Donald Trump says his sweeping tax and spending cuts will help grow the economy. His critics say the bill will come at a high cost and increase national debt. But will it? Dubbed the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, President Donald Trump's signature policy comes with big, painful cuts. The legislation would slash taxes, largely benefiting the wealthiest Americans. To pay for it, federal spending would be reduced, including on Medicaid, food stamps and student loans. Supporters say the bill could jumpstart economic growth, create jobs, raise wages and even lower the national debt. Critics, though, including some Republicans, say millions of Americans would pay the price. And the non-partisan Congressional Budget Office estimates the bill would actually add an estimated $3 trillion to debt over a decade. So will this landmark legislation bring economic revival, or is it a risky gamble with lasting consequences? Katia Lopez-Hodoyan reports.
The bill is incredible.
Love it or hate it, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act is a cornerstone of President Donald Trump's domestic agenda, affecting virtually every American. The bill is expensive, but Trump says it's worth it.
It tells you there's something for everyone. I mean, it's a great bill. There is something for everyone.
Republicans point to the bill's widespread tax cuts, military investments, and higher spending to crack down on immigration. All issues they've long accused Democrats of mishandling.
With this legislation, we're fulfilling the mandate we were entrusted with last November and setting our country and the American people up to be safer, stronger, and more prosperous.
To offset the cost, food and health care programs would be slashed, mostly affecting low-income families. Democrats say the bill would make the rich richer and the poor poorer.
If you are going to ruin people's lives by kicking them off their health care or cutting their food stamps, don't make the moral injury even worse by padding the pockets of the richest people in the country.
One Big Beautiful Bill, critics say, will lead to a big, ugly mess the U.S. can't afford. It would add an estimated $3 trillion to the U.S. national debt over a decade. That's on top of its current debt of more than $35 trillion.
It's going to add much more to the debt. And so I think without question, this is not a fiscally conservative bill.
Trump has promised an economic boom for Americans, but many are still waiting, struggling with soaring prices and a high cost of living.
The president, vice president, cabinet, all those people, I don't think they really know what the average Joe Blow person goes through every day and what everything costs. They don't have a clue.
Under pressure, Trump is also looking to the Federal Reserve, calling on it to drop rates as low as 1% to stimulate the economy.
We're in a position of wanting to take our time and make a smart decision.
But Chairman Jerome Powell says that's not Trump's call to make. Trump insists the bill will open the door for other economic initiatives to fall into place. But critics argue it will backfire both in the short and long term. Katia Lopez-Hodoyan, Al Jazeera, for Counting the Cost.
Harry G. Broadman is the former Chief of Staff of the President's Council of Economic Advisers in the U.S. He's also a former Assistant U.S. Trade Representative, and he joins us from Washington, D.C. now. Great to have you on the programme, Harry. As we're having this conversation, the bill heads to the House of Representatives for that big vote. So do you believe that Donald Trump is going to get his big, beautiful bill as he wants it?
Well, all indications that this morning at Washington Times certainly seems that would be the case, that it will pass the House. It will not be a pretty vote, I think, for most of the American people, but I think Trump will ultimately get his way.
And Harry, this will come at a very large cost, no matter what. Some experts saying too high a cost, at a cost that America can't afford, around $3 trillion?
Yeah, so there's the macro cost that you've just mentioned. I think the more important cost from my perspective, and I think most economists' perspective who have policy chops, is it's going to engender skewness in the income distribution. There are, always when you do public policy making, is you want to weigh the gains to the winners and the losses to the losers. It's not clear to me that the weights attached to the losses to the losers will balance out with what the gainers make. And so I think there is a pretty high likelihood that this will skew income distribution. Now, some will argue that a higher income distribution to the wealthier will drive incentives for investment. That's true. But this country, as many know, is under incredible tension politically and policy making wise. And this is a very divisive bill, and I think how it will be implemented, I think, is frankly more important, in the long run than the actual vote itself.
Let's look at the fact then that some people believe that this will make the rich richer and the poor poorer. Cuts to Medicaid, Social Security, safety nets, students, they all seem to be going there. As you said, a very divisive bill. Do you agree that those are the cuts that should be being made?
Well, the question is, those cuts are obviously very sensitive to that part of the population. And I think, cuts of that magnitude really should be based on whether there's waste or fraud or abuse, and that money is going, to nowhere. And I don't think that that's what the data that most of economists like myself have been looking at for years. And, you can just pick up the headlines in any newspaper and see the divisiveness in this country. And it's clear that he will get the votes, I think, as we've discussed, but I think at what cost? And I think it's really going to create more upheaval in the social fabric of the United States. And the question is that worth it? I don't know, but this is not the way that I would make public policy, frankly.
Yeah, and that's the human cost there then. Trump saying, though, that the bill will bring explosive growth. That's a quote from Donald Trump. Do you believe that that's an accurate assessment?
I think to some extent that's true, but what really matters, I think, beyond what's happening within the United States domestically is what does that mean for U.S. competitiveness abroad? And, we've got competitiveness on the part of our factories and the products and services that we produce, but what about the workers? What about, children coming through school now, college graduates, will they get the kind of, incentives to sharpen their skills to compete with other countries around the world? And I think is what really agonizes people like me who have been in these policy debates for a long time, is looking at the long run versus the short run. There may well be a short run gain, but are we becoming a more competitive economy, as a result of this kind of legislation? I don't know what the Chinese are thinking when they look at a bill like this, but you can be sure that some of them are probably chuckling.
Well, we shall see what happens. But in terms of the economy, we cannot talk about the economy without also looking at the impact of Trump's tariffs. How are they feeding into this? And then that big word, inflation. Are there inflation fears?
Well, absolutely. All other things equal, as economists are wont to say, tariffs will raise the price. And the question is that going to help, more sales of exports overseas or hurt imports coming in, and what's the balance therefrom? And I don't think that tariffs historically have shown to be the most effective way of improving the competitiveness of any economy of the world. And these are unprecedented, sizable tariffs, and the distribution of those tariffs across the economy. This is in part how we got into the Great Depression. And I think, economic historians like myself, frankly, have studied this, and this is not probably the wisest course of action to boost, U.S. competitiveness, which is what we all want.
It's been called the big, beautiful bill by Donald Trump, and this is a big question for you, Harry. But what did this bill miss?
Well, I think it really does not focus enough on sharpening the skills of U.S. workers. Investing in research and development, particularly applied research and development, that makes America more competitive against the Chinese and even our partners in the G7, who I think have taken more important steps to sharpen science and technology in their economies. And this bill does not focus on that. It doesn't focus really, frankly, on the future of sharpening the competitive edge of United States industries. And I think that is a big component that is missing. And it's not the way I think most of us think about what kinds of curatives are needed in order to boost U.S. growth, and not just boost economic growth in the short term, but over the long term to become more competitive in the global economy.
OK, Harry G. Broadman, we really appreciate your expertise on this subject. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.